Well, how's everybody doing out there in internet land? Hi, howdy, good morning, and what's up? My name is Brian Trippett. I am the Front Porch Conservative. Welcome back to Front Porch Brunch, our weekly gathering of the Saturdays to talk about items in the news. And boy, have we got a lot to talk about. We are on YouTube, we are on Rumble, we are on Twitter. So if you haven't done it yet, send out a message to all your friends, enemies, frenemies, and acquaintances. Tell them to get on in here. Let's sit down. Let's talk about what goes on in the world. Glad to have all of you here. Like I say, my name is Brian Trippett. I'm the Front Porch Conservative. This is Front Porch Brunch, a friendly little gathering of people who are wanting to know what's going on in the world. And boy, is there a lot to talk about this week. Glad to have all of you here. We'll let everybody settle into the room, gather around, see who's going to be here, talk amongst ourselves as we are often prone to do, and we'll talk about what's happening out there in the world. Again, we're on YouTube, we are on Rumble, we are on Twitter, so please send out a tweet, a getter, a gab, a Truth Social, a Facebook post, whatever it is that you do to help spread the word about this going little concern of a show and a channel. We are always appreciative. Thank you ever so much. Oh, it's been an interesting week for things going on in the news, hasn't it? And we're going to talk about all of that. Before we begin, I want to take a moment to give a shout out to everybody who was involved with Thursday's live stream of Trump versus the United States, which is the presidential immunity case. I especially want to thank Daniel Street, Brentley from the Dangerous Rhetoric podcast, Ruben Christopher Haynes, my partner in crime. Those gentlemen were absolutely fantastic. If you did not get a chance to see that particular live stream, it's out on YouTube. It's on Rumble. Check it out. It's very good. What we always try to do, especially for big things like this, is live stream. Ideally, I'd love to have the camera and be able to just, follow along with what's going on. But, the federal courts do not do that sort of thing. So we were able to listen to audio arguments. And I guess that's kind of where I want to start. Good morning. The unofficial bartender of the electronic front porch, Leanne, is here. U-Haul, glad to see you. I want to start with the Trump immunity case before the Supreme Court. And I know that people who were listening in, whether it was on our channel or other places, the lawyers and the judges were really getting into the weeds on this. But then again, given what they're having to deal with, you kind of have to give them a little bit of grace on this. And what I'm talking about, I mentioned it at the very top of the live stream that we did on Thursday, that this is territory that the Supreme Court has never had to deal with before. In about, 2 more years, a little under 2 more years, we're going to be at the 250-year mark for the existence of the United States of America. And in almost 250 years, we've never had to deal with one particular constitutional question. We've dealt with it in various forms, particularly the question of, is a president immune from civil liability? And you can make an argument we dealt with it in part during Watergate in U.S. v. Nixon. But we've never taken on the particular question that was asked of the court. Now, for those of you who are wondering, well, what were they asking of the court? I want to play you a snippet of the live stream, and Daniel R. Street, who is a licensed attorney in the state of Louisiana and a published author, I really do. I recommend him to you. Read his stuff and check him out. He is a very sharp commentator. But I want to play you part of that live stream. Here is what the court wanted the lawyers to answer for them.
Absolutely. Well, this is one of those situations where the Supreme Court has told everyone, they told the parties, they told the litigants, they told the world what they wanted the parties to address. The question, as framed by the United States Supreme Court, is, quote, whether and if so, to what extent does a former president enjoy presidential immunity from criminal prosecution for conduct alleged to involve official acts during his tenure in office?
Okay, so that was the $1 million question. In other words, when a president leaves office, to what extent are they immune from criminal prosecution for things that they did while in office? Now, on its face, that question may not mean much. But, and even Michael Sauer, the attorney for Trump, brought up some very interesting examples, which, by the way, I've been saying, other commentators have been saying, if we're going to make the argument that the president, a former president, has very limited or no immunity from criminal prosecution for things that they did while they were in office, then that sort of begs the question, are we going to go back to the days of Barack Obama and, bring up or criminally charge him for a drone strike on 2 American citizens on foreign soil? What happens when Joe Biden leaves office? Are we going to go after him for stuff? Do we want to go back? I mean, you get the idea here. Okay. Well, the arguments on the whole were really, really good. On both sides. I mean, regardless of how you feel about this, and I'll say it again. I will say it again. I was very impressed with both attorneys. I thought John Sauer, who was the attorney for Trump, was very well prepared. I mean, his arguments were crisp. They were clean. Like I said, regardless of whether you agree with him or not, he was bringing it. And Michael Dreeben, to a large extent as well, on behalf of the Justice Department. So I want to go back and give a little bit of flavor for both sides on this. And I want to start not necessarily with an audio. Oh yeah. Now Dreeben, are you talking about Dreeben or are you talking about Sauer? Sauer's voice was like nails on a chalkboard. I agree with you there, if that's who you're referring to. Dreeben's voice was just annoying, at least to me anyway. But I want to go back and give you a little bit of flavor for what this was like if you didn't get the chance to hear it. This is a written account of an exchange between Justice Alito and Michael Dreeben, the attorney for the Justice Department. Alito, if the president gets advice from the Attorney General, does that something is lawful? Is that an absolute defense? Dreeben says yes. Well, wouldn't the president just pick an attorney general who'll let him do whatever he wants? And Dreeben, in the opinion of this person, looks stunned. And what Alito's trying to get across is, well, okay, if you're going to make the argument that, if the attorney general gives him advice, and the president takes it, well, okay, the president, he's covered. Well, aren't you arguing that that's immunity? And that's the point that I kept bringing up, at the end of the stream. The more that Michael Dreeben, the attorney for the Justice Department, kept talking, the more I kept thinking, well, you're basically defining presidential immunity, but you just won't use the phrase. So, I mean, that's one side of it. And, there were people on both sides of this thing. I want to play you also. I think I've got it here. Yeah, I do. Good. Had to restart my computer with like 30 different tabs running wide open. I'm thinking, oh, please, God, do not let me lose this stuff. Fortunately, it didn't. There was an exchange between Ketanji Jackson Brown. This runs about 2 minutes, and Mr. Sauer, the attorney for Trump. And I think this is worth, playing. So, folks, do me a favor. Take a listen to this. We'll stop it if at some point we need to, but I really want to let this run uninterrupted. And check this out and tell me what you think.
But he's not. There's no criminal prosecution. If there's no threat of criminal prosecution, what prevents the president from just doing whatever he wants?
All the structural checks that are identified in Fitzgerald and a whole series of this court's cases that go back to Martin against Mott
For example, impeachment, oversight by Congress, public oversight. There's a long series that Fitzgerald directly addresses this in the civil context. And we think
I'm not sure. I'm not sure that's much of a backstop. And what I'm, I guess, more worried about. You seem to be worried about the president being chilled. I think that we would have a really significant opposite problem if the president wasn't chilled. If someone with those kinds of powers, the most powerful person in the world, with the greatest amount of authority, could go into office knowing that there would be no potential penalty for committing crimes.
Okay, well now here's where I disagree, and I don't think I'm going to have to play the whole thing now that I think about it, because her argument pretty much sums up the position without really having to play much else. Ketanji Jackson Brown's argument, at least in that clip, is that, well, no, wait a minute. Are we really sure that we've got any kind of, if we go with your argument, is that a sufficient backstop? In other words, how do we know that the president's not going to go into office thinking, well, hey, I have presidential immunity. I can do whatever I want. Here's where I'll slightly disagree with Justice Jackson Brown. That's why you have impeachment. Remember, the president can be removed from office for, bribery, treason, or other high crimes and misdemeanors. Well, the ultimate cure constitutionally for actions that a president engages in that are something that are high crimes or misdemeanors is impeachment and conviction by the Senate. To me, and this is just my reading of her statement, she's arguing, well, there's nothing that prevents that. No, we do have things that prevent that. It's just that, either you're not recognizing them or you're not wanting to recognize how authoritative they are. So that's both sides of the argument. Now, where do I personally think this thing's going to come down? Well, I'll go back to what I said the other day. I've got a feeling that there are, for sure, 5 votes that would say, yes, a former president has immunity from criminal prosecution when he leaves office. And the votes go like this: Thomas, Alito, Gorsuch, Roberts, Kavanaugh. Now, of those 5 votes, I think that Gorsuch, Alito, Thomas would probably, when this ruling is written, if these 5 individuals or more, let's just start with 5, however, if those 5 justices make up the majority opinion, I've got a feeling that Thomas, Alito, and Gorsuch are going to be the most robust in terms of arguing that the president has broad, and I mean very broad, immunity from criminal prosecution for acts that they committed while they were in office. Now, of those 5, there are 2 of them that I think, the way they're going, they're like, well, yeah, he's got broad immunity from criminal prosecution, but maybe it shouldn't be as robust or broad as, as some people are like, it's kind of, So there's that. I think that's where Roberts and Kavanaugh are going to come down. I could be wrong. I could be dead wrong about this, but we'll see. On the other side of it, I'm pretty sure that Ketanji Jackson Brown and Sotomayor are going to argue, absolutely not. A president is not immune from criminal prosecution if they leave office for acts that they commit while they are president. The only 2 votes that I personally cannot get a feel for at this point are Barrett and Kagan. Now, my friend Daniel Street, who was on the panel, says, well, no, Kagan's going to rule with the liberals. Well, maybe she will. But if she is, she's being very, very cagey about this. Okay? Very cagey indeed. Barrett, I don't know. I don't know where Barrett's at on this. I just can't tell. And the reason that I'm willing to put Kagan in with Barrett is, and I said this the other day, Kagan is very cagey in court during an oral argument. I've now had the opportunity to hear her twice, and she keeps her cards very close to the vest. Very close indeed. It's either at a minimum it's going to be 5-4 or it will be 6-3, and it will divide along the judicial ideological lines of the court. That's just my opinion. Now, my good friend Daniel Street brought up a really good point, and he's not the only commentator to make this. The court is probably going to make a distinction, and for the record, I think appropriately so, because to me, this is commonsensical. Okay, what are the public acts of the President of the United States, and what are his acts that are maybe of private nature, not necessarily having to do with his office? Probably, and this is the opinion of Daniel, and I, like I said, I can't disagree with him. The court is going to establish, okay, look, if it's a public act, in other words, something that would touch on direct responsibilities that the president would have, okay, you really can't touch him for that. Now, on the other hand, if it's something that's like at the edges, no, okay, that may or may not, which means that going forward, and again, this is all dependent on how the court rules on this. If the court comes back and says, okay, lower courts, you've got to make a determination about, was it a public act or a private act for which you're supposedly trying to, say he was engaging in criminality. That's probably how this is going to go down. And by the way, you and myself and Daniel Street and other commentators aren't the only ones picking up on this. Check this out. This is from Reuters. U.S. Supreme Court justices in Trump case lean towards some level of immunity. This is an article by John Krusell and Andrew Chung. The Supreme Court's conservative justices signaled on support on Thursday for U.S. presidents having some level of protection from criminal charges for certain acts taken in office as it tackled Donald Trump's claims of immunity from prosecution for trying to undo his 2020 election loss. During the 2.5 hours of arguments in the case, most of the justices seemed unlikely to embrace Trump's most far-reaching argument that presidents have absolute immunity for official acts, an assertion that appears to wilt under hypothetical questions involving selling of nuclear secrets, taking a bribe, or ordering a coup or political assassination. But the conservative justices who hold a 6-3 majority on the nation's top judicial body indicated concern about presidents lacking any degree of immunity, especially for less egregious acts. The contours of such a ruling, though, were not clear after arguments probing the extent of presidential powers. Trump, seeking this year to regain the White House, appealed after lower courts rejected his request to be shielded from 4 election-related criminal charges on the grounds that he was serving as president when he took the actions that led to the indictment obtained by special counsel Jack Smith. The Supreme Court's eventual ruling may narrow the special counsel's allegations against Trump, but it appeared that at least parts of the indictment would survive. The decision could further delay Trump's trial, however, if the Supreme Court instructs the lower courts to determine how to apply its newly formulated view of immunity. Smith attended the arguments. Okay. Now, all of that would be bad enough for people who are observers of the court. But when I say that other people are noticing what the court did, this is almost comical, and I've got to play this for you. Rachel Maddow of MSNBC News, who I respect her talents as a broadcaster. I also respect the fact that she's probably one of the intellectual leaders of the left. If you want to know what people on the left are thinking about what's going on politically in America, tune into Rachel Maddow. Doesn't mean I agree with her on a lot of everything, but she's a very articulate, very intelligent lady. And she definitely had a take on what she heard at the Supreme Court, and I've got to play this for you because it's almost comical. Folks, do me a favor and listen to this.
The not consensus, but I think widely held view of today's proceedings at the United States Supreme Court is that the conservatives on the court will likely succeed in using this case to further and fatally delay criminal court proceedings against Donald Trump.
Okay, well, that's not really what they're trying to do, Rachel. That might wind up being the net effect, but that's not what the court was trying to do. Okay, let's continue.
Before the election in November. Rather than reject his claims of immunity from prosecution, like all the federal judges who have considered this matter before them have done, they instead will carve out some newly specified class of actions that are immune from prosecution.
No, they simply asked, to what extent is the president immune from prosecution after he leaves office for supposedly criminal action? That's not carving out anything. It's clarifying something. But we continue.
If you're a president, and they will invent a test for deciding what counts as that kind of action by a president. And then they will send Trump's indictment, Trump's federal January 6th case, back through a whole new cycle in the lower federal courts to run his attempted overthrow of the government through the courts.
It was not an attempted overthrow of the government, Rachel. He was using his constitutionally protected right under the First Amendment's freedom of speech to contest the results, which is his right to do, by the way.
Newly invented legal test that they are going to make for him in this case, which, yes, will take forever, because in the meantime, of course, he will get a chance to get back into the White House in order to shut the whole thing down. And in the meantime, the American people will be asked to go and vote on whether he should take that seat again in the White House, without knowing what federal prosecutors have found and believe is criminal about his conduct when he tried to overthrow the government to stay in office the last time.
No, Rachel, the American people do know what was done. They saw it for themselves on television. They saw it for themselves and heard his speeches. They're quite capable of making up their own mind about what is and is not the truth. Ah, this woman, some days it just really just galls you, doesn't it? But anyway, that's Rachel. That's what she's got to say about the whole thing. So where it goes from here, I don't know. Now, one of the questions that I posed to the panel, and particularly to Daniel, as he is a licensed attorney, given that the Supreme Court is going to end their term on June 30th or thereabouts, okay, how quickly do they make the ruling? He's of the opinion they'll wait till June to do it. And he may be right, because, I mean, look, regardless of where you come down on this, whether you think Trump ought to have immunity, he shouldn't have immunity, and let's just take Trump out of the whole question. Should the president have immunity from criminal prosecution for acts that he committed while in office? I mean, just take Trump out of the whole thing. There is a very legitimate constitutional question that needs to be decided here. I think Daniel's right. I think the judges are going to take their time. I mean, even Gorsuch alluded to it during the oral arguments that we are writing a ruling for the ages. I mean, you hear that phrase, and, you know, like a lot of language in the 21st century, you know, it's overblown and overused. In this case, that's not the situation. They are indeed writing a ruling for the ages, and they've got to get this one right, at least as much as they can in their own minds as justices of the Supreme Court. So we'll see how all this shakes out. I mean, you know, it was absolutely fascinating to hear what was being said. And, you know, and I said it the last time we did this for the Colorado case, you know, and I don't know if anybody at the Supreme Court will ever hear this statement, but I really do. I want to thank the Supreme Court as an institution for, you know, the audio feed that they give in situations like this, because for folks like me and you and others who are interested in hearing what's going on, you know, this was something that absolutely was invaluable. I mean, like I say, regardless of where you come down on this, regardless of how you feel about Trump, we all got an education in civics on Thursday. And I think that was pretty daggone cool. Which, good morning, Gypsy. Gypsy too. But good morning. Glad you're here. And I have an announcement that you're going to enjoy. And since you're here, I'll just go ahead and pull this up right now. I do try as much as possible to, let me see. No, it didn't do it. Hang on. It's easier to be dramatic when your computer works. Hang on, y'all. Got to do something here. Really, this one I am definitely looking forward to making this announcement. Yeah, here it is. Okay, now I can do this. Mark it on your calendars. Mark it on your calendars. An old friend of the Electronic Front Porch is coming back this Thursday. We are going to be honored to host once again Dr. Robin McCutcheon, professor of economics, on the Electronic Front Porch. I reached out to her because there's some things economically that are going on in the country right now, economic news. And I thought, if ever there was a time that we need to sit down and talk with somebody who knows what the heck is going on, that, this is it. So mark your calendars this Thursday night, 7 p.m. The good doctor is coming back for a conversation about all things economic. And I want to get her take on some of what's going on college campuses, which we're going to get into that here momentarily. So, hold on to your hats, folks. But yeah, Dr. Robin is coming back this Thursday night, 7 p.m. Set your calendars, etc. Now, in all things Trump news, which, these days seems like it's everything, there is another trial that is still continuing to go on. And up in Manhattan, in the Big Apple, Alvin, the New York chipmunk, Alvin Bragg, the Manhattan DA, is still continuing to slog through his case about Donald Trump and what's going on as it relates to 2016. Well, we've got some news on that front. And
those remarks, joining us is
Stop that. Like I said, I love it when my computer works correctly. Okay, now I can get into it. So let's start with the Associated Press, because this is going to be one of those moments that is instructive of how certain things are reported and what the reality may be. Okay, let's go to the Associated Press. Headline: ex-tabloid publisher testifies he scooped up possibly damaging tales to shield his old friend Trump. Article written by Jennifer Peltz, Michael Sisak, Colleen Long, and Jake Offenhartz. That's an interesting name. As Donald Trump was running for president 2016, his old friend at the National Enquirer was scooping up potentially damaging stories about the candidate and paying out tens of thousands of dollars to keep them from the public eye. When it came to the seamy claims by porn performer Stormy Daniels, David Pecker, the tabloid's longtime publisher, said he put his foot down. Quote, "I am not paying for this story," he told jurors Thursday at Trump's hush money trial, recounting his version of a conversation with Trump's former lawyer Michael Cohen about the catch and kill scheme that prosecutors alleged amounted to interference in the race. Mr. Pecker was already $180,000 in the hole on other Trump-related stories by the time Daniels came along, at which point he said, "I don't want to be involved in this." Pecker's testimony was a critical building block for the prosecution's theory that their partnership was a way to illegally influence the 2016 election. The Manhattan District Attorney is seeking to elevate the gravity of the history-making first trial of a former American president and first of 4 criminal cases against Trump to reach a jury. All right. To quote Gino Bisconti, let's get into this. Well, now keep in mind, really for Monday, Tuesday, Thursday. No, I'm sorry. I think they brought him to the stand on Tuesday. Tuesday, Thursday, and all day Friday, this gentleman, who is the former publisher or editor-in-chief at the National Enquirer and an old friend of Donald Trump, was brought in to testify about what went on. Well, various parties have thoughts about what actually happened and how it went down and what the practical effect is going to be. So let's start with the inestimable Jonathan Turley, professor of law at George Washington University in D.C., and he was on Fox News with about 2 or 3 other people. Whoops, wrong people. First boomer of the day. And let's hear what he had to say, because what he was asked and how he answered is very, very telling. Folks, do me a favor and check this out.
I think you should look at it as a good day. If this is what they thought was their strongest start, this is a particularly anemic case. I mean, Pecker described how he asked Trump about the reimbursement of Cohen, and Trump said, I don't know anything about that. But more importantly, you now have the defense pointing out that he did the same thing for other celebrities. The point is that Trump was and is a celebrity. He had a hit show on television, and that was really good for the magazine. And Pecker himself said, I had a couple of different motivations here because this is what my readers wanted as well. None of that makes a particularly good case for anything criminal. But what is still missing is the fact that he just described doing the same thing for celebrities, because there's nothing illegal in this. There's nothing illegal in having an NDA. You can object to it. You can not like the underlying story, but it's not a campaign contribution. And the federal government itself made that clear.
Katie?
Okay, did you catch what he just said? You may not like the underlying story. You might not like the fact that it was done, but that doesn't make it illegal. And the feds told everybody this a long time ago. And I want to play for you guys real quick something that was on Newsmax the other night. Let me get to it here real fast. Hang on. They brought on 3 different individuals: Doug Burns, Ben Whitegarten, and another gentleman, and they got into the question of the case in New York. And I want you guys to hear this. This is from a former federal prosecutor. Okay. Gets asked the question, what's going on? What do you think about it all? Do me a favor and listen to what he says.
I'm the second, and senior contributor for The Federalist, Ben Weingarten. Okay, Doug, I want to go to you first.
Sure.
So David Pecker continues to stand by the story that former President Trump asked him to handle these potentially damaging stories that could come out, including from Playboy model Karen McDougal.
Yes.
Is that illegal, though? I mean, I don't. This is a trial about a violation of law.
Yeah.
Is there something wrong with that from a legal standpoint?
I can explain this until I'm blue in the face. I've said it over and over and over. The catch and kill, killing a story, that is not illegal. That's not the end of the analysis, though.
Right.
But they go into this unbelievably strained legal attempt to take a misdemeanor business records offense, which, by the way, was out of time under the statute of limitations. Very interesting.
Yeah.
And it appeared at first that they wanted to bump it up on a federal election theory, and all of the scholars deduced you can't do that. Under New York state law, if you're going to bump the New York state misdemeanor up to a felony, it has to be based on a New York offense. So they pivot like Fred Astaire, and they turn around and they go, no, now it's a New York state misdemeanor involving interfering with an election. There's only one problem. If you look at that statute, that's state elections, not federal. It's a ridiculously strange theory.
Right.
But the point is, to tie it all home, they don't care. Ben and I were talking about this. They don't care if it gets reversed next year. They don't care about that. They just want to get a conviction before November.
Yeah.
Folks, I know that sometimes I get on a horse and I just won't, it doesn't seem like I want to get off of it. But it just bears repeating. At worst, What this is, factually speaking, is the misstatement in an accounting ledger about what a transaction is. Bookkeeping errors, which you could probably, I mean, look, I'm no CPA, but you could make an argument, well, no, we didn't incorrectly, report what it was because we had this justification, this justification, this justification, this justification. Fine. But let's just assume for a moment that, okay, it was reported incorrectly on the books, and when they reported it to state regulators in New York, that they got it wrong. Worst case scenario, you charge them with a misdemeanor under New York law. Well, the problem is you can't even do that because this was so long ago, the statute of limitations ran out. But a very novel, and I'm sorry, that's exactly what it is, a very novel idea has been cooked up that, hey, we'll charge Trump with federal election violation, and we'll say, hey, you deliberately recorded these transactions incorrectly, and that's a contribution to your campaign, and daggone it, that's illegal. The Federal Election Commission wouldn't touch this case. The Southern District of New York wouldn't touch this case. Alvin Bragg's predecessor wouldn't touch this case. Nobody wanted this case until finally Bragg decided to go forward with it with the help of Michael Colangelo, who used to be the number 3 man at the Justice Department, who resigned his position and went to work for Bragg. And it just blows the mind. It really does. One last clip, and then we'll switch subjects. Matt Walsh of the Daily Wire was on with Piers Morgan the other day. That's a very interesting pairing of individuals, by the way. And Piers Morgan brought up a point I had forgotten about, but it's very, very valid. Okay? I want to play this. This runs almost 2 minutes. I am not going to interrupt this, and then we'll talk about it after the fact. Here's Matt Walsh on with Piers Morgan. Check this out.
They have not been careful here at all. It's been quite the obvious.
Well, I think just paying, whether he paid off Stormy Daniels or not and knew it was being used for that, I don't care. It's like, a fling with a porn star 18 years ago that he says didn't happen, but it probably did. I'm not sure that it doesn't pass to me the bar for putting America through a trial. I mean, the whole country is enduring this now of a president of the United States who was literally in the White House just like 3 years ago. There he is trudging into a 14th floor Manhattan courtroom in Lower Manhattan, day after day after day, being prevented from being able to campaign, which I think in itself is completely unfair, that one of the 2 nominees should not be allowed to campaign for 6 weeks because of this trial. But just the sort of triviality of it all. It just doesn't seem to me to pass any test for what should be happening.
Yeah, and also, are we supposed to believe that no other president has ever paid somebody off?
Well, we know Bill Clinton paid off Paula Jones $850,000 to get rid of a harassment case while he was the serving president of the United States. Well, I don't remember him enduring any kind of trial.
Of course not.
I mean, he had sex with an intern in the Oval Office. I mean, both of those things to me far outweigh in terms of magnitude of shame to the office, to Trump, when he wasn't president, but 18 years ago, when he was a well-known ladies' man onto his 3rd marriage, potentially having a one-night stand with a porn star. I mean, to me, there's no real comparison. But the Clinton never went through any of this.
Did you catch what he just said? And that was the part that I had forgotten about. And he's absolutely right. When Bill Clinton was president of the United States, Clinton settled a sexual harassment suit with Paula Jones to the tune of almost $1 million while he was president. in office for actions that he had done while he was governor of the state of Arkansas. Nobody put the country through all this. I mean, this is what's being done to Trump. And I mean, I know I beat this over the head every time I come on here, but what's being done to Trump is an absolute ridiculousness. It is. It's insane what we're doing here. Well, not we. Let me rephrase that. Bragg, drama mama Fannie Willis, Jack Boot Smith, and others are just putting the man through. You know. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Let's talk about Juanita Broderick. I know. I mean, that was, accused rape. And she could make a pretty good argument for it. But are we going after Bill Clinton for that? Heck no. Nope, 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 nope. Yeah, former Playboy model. They want to throw that up. Oh, we're gonna get into that in Hodgepodge stew. And I thank you guys for reminding me about it. Yeah, that's a real interesting one. Wrote a book and was Clinton never challenged her on it, not one word. Oh, I did see that. The Honorable John McGarvey is here. Good morning, sir. Yes, I did see that. Yeah, buddy. Well, Nathan, he's got time on his hands now. He ain't working on that, democracy-saving prosecution of Donald Trump down there in Atlanta, don't you know? So I guess he and Drama Mama can jet set around whenever they need to or whatever. Who knows? So anyway, that's catching up with everything going on with Trump right now, which by the way, I didn't realize this till the other day. It's bad enough that Donald Trump may wind up missing his son's high school graduation. He was up in New York yesterday on his wife's birthday. Now I can just hear people out there who don't like Trump be like, "Oh, boo hoo, boo freaking who. He wouldn't have to do this if he wasn't such a scumbag." It's his wife's birthday. Now, as far as I know, Trump never requested to be out of court for the day, but yeah, I'm sure he would much rather have spent the day celebrating his wife's birthday with her than to be stuck in a courtroom in Manhattan. Just unbelievable. Anywho, we're going to switch gears, but before we do, real quick commercial. My name is Brian Trippett. I am known as the Front Porch Conservative. This is Front Porch Brunch, where we are gathering together to talk about items in the news. We got quite a few of them to talk about today. And we are on YouTube, we are on Rumble, we are on Twitter. So if you haven't done it yet, and I know a lot of you have, bless your hearts. I love it every time you do. Thank you for sending out messages on social media sharing around the link. Hit the like button. Please hit the like button. You would be helping me out tremendously if you do. Got quite a few people in here on YouTube. We got people on Rumble. We have people on Twitter. So, yeah, thank you for being here. So let's shift gears and let's talk about one of the other big stories that's going on right now, continuing to go on right now, by the way. And that is the protest on college campuses that are breaking out over the Israel-Hamas conflict. And basically the protests are pro-Palestinian in flavor. Well, we found out some interesting things this week, and one of them is not necessarily a surprise, but it still fails to shock me. Oh, wait a minute. I didn't see this. Hang on. Even worse, Mershon's surprise court schedule for during Wednesday, Wisconsin and Michigan. Oh, jeez. I tell you what, and I mean this in all sincerity. Hey, New Yorkers, you folks up in New York City, I hope you guys are paying attention. And remember, you still have the power to vote. Anyway, let's shift gears. So some news came out as it relates to the protests that are going on campuses around the country, and it's surprising but not surprising. It's not surprising who's involved, kind of surprising still. Check this out. Did you guys know that George Soros is paying some of these students who are protesting? This is an article from the New York Post. Headline: Soros is paying student radicals who are fueling nationwide explosion of Israel-hating protest. Article by Isabel Vincent. This is on Friday. George Soros and his hard-left acolytes are paying agitators who are fueling the explosion of radical anti-Israel protest at colleges across the country. The protests, which began when students took over Columbia University's Morningside Heights campus last week, have mushroomed nationwide. Copycat tent cities have been set up at colleges including Harvard, Yale, Berkeley. Oh, there's a shock, Berkeley. The Ohio State University and Emory in Georgia, all of them organized by branches of the Soros-funded Students for Justice in Palestine, and at some, students have clashed with police. Now, here is a map that the New York Post provided to show where these protests have broken out so far. Going from north to south: Tufts University in Massachusetts, Harvard, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, Cornell, University of Rochester, obviously Columbia, George Washington University, University of Pittsburgh, Ohio State, Emory, Northwestern, University of Minnesota, no shock there, University of Texas at Dallas, University of Texas at Austin, Cal Poly Humboldt, University of California, and USC, among others. Read a little bit further into this article. The SJP parent organization has been funded by a network of nonprofits, ultimately funded by, among others, Soros, the billionaire left-wing investor. At 3 colleges, the protests are being encouraged by paid radicals who are fellows of a Soros-funded group called the U.S. Campaign for Palestinian Rights. Yeah, buddy. Thank you, George Soros. You are just wonderful. Just wonderful. Never ceases to amaze me with this guy. There are some other pieces of news that... sorry. Hang on a minute. Just had to straighten up something from where I had to restart the computer. I love and hate technology, by the way. Did I mention that? So aside from the fact that George Soros is now involved in all this, let's see, hang on a minute before I do that. All the tents exactly the same. They have the same, Yep. Thank you very much, George. And aside from the fact that old George Soros is funding some, or maybe even all of this for all we know, who knows, but at minimum, he's funding some of it. It's now reached the point that you have members of Congress who are siding in with the pro-Palestinian protesters, and not just siding in with them, they're showing up with them. Check this out. And I'm not surprised by this, but I'm gonna make a point here in just a second. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has time to visit protesters at Columbia, but she doesn't have time to go to the border, posts this one individual on Twitter. So yeah, let me play a little snippet of this. Check this out.
Nice to meet you. Thank you so much for coming out here. It's great the support we're getting. People look different.
Yep. So, like the individual on Twitter said, got time to go to Columbia for the protest, but no time to go down to the border. Now, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was not the only one, by the way. Democrat Representative Greg Cesar was at the University of Texas at Austin. So yeah, they're getting around for this. So check this out.
In 1960 in this place. Thousands of students came together to picket locations on the drag. To picket against segregation. Their fight for civil rights. Continues here today.
Unbelievable. Well, then again, it's not so much unbelievable. Now, I have a word of warning for all you Democrat politicians out there. AOC, Cesar, all the rest of you. Be very careful. Be very careful the seed you sow and where you sow it to. You sow to, the old expression goes, you sow to the wind, you shall reap the whirlwind. And if you don't believe me, go talk to Chuck Schumer, because he's learning that lesson the hard way right now. I want to take you back in time. This is when Justices Gorsuch and Kavanaugh had been appointed. This was outside the Supreme Court of the United States, and U.S. Senator Chuck Schumer said the following.
I want to tell you, Gorsuch, I want to tell you, Kavanaugh, you have released the whirlwind, and you will pay the price.
Well, there are moments that I wonder, in those times of quiet reflection that guys like Chuck Schumer have, if they'd really like to take that one back. And the reason that I asked the question, did you guys see what happened to Schumer this week? Out in front of his house in Brooklyn? It's coming back to haunt him. This scene, and again, take it for what it's worth. You have about 1,000 people in front of Chuck Schumer's house in Brooklyn, and they shut down the street that he lives on to protest against him. Do me a favor, guys, and check this out. There's no sound on it, but you can see him. This is supposedly on the street where Chuck Schumer is at. So take it for what it's worth. Yeah, Chuck. I just wonder if this is not going through your mind right now. If this is not coming back to haunt you in a big way. Now, not everything that's going on is confined up to New York City. I've got to play you this, okay? Did y'all see the clip? Did y'all see the clip this week where the professor at Emory University is taken away by officers and is screaming, "I'm an economics professor, I'm an economics professor," which everybody's like, I don't know why she's doing this. I have no idea. Well, there's a little more to that story. First, let me show you the clip. Do me a favor and check this out. It runs about 12 seconds.
I impulsively hit him on the head very lightly to get his attention, and they grabbed me, threw me to the ground, and arrested me.
Yeah, that's the other half of the story. Apparently, this professor decided that it was a real good idea to walk up to a cop in a tense situation where these protests are going on, and in her words, lightly tap him on the head. Yeah. Yeah. And lady, you're wondering why the cop is taking you away in handcuffs? Jeez. So that's in Georgia. Now, go down to Texas. The The Texans take this thing a little more seriously. Okay. I'm going to play you a clip here in a minute from this one kid, and his comments are just kind of, I shouldn't say they're not kind of funny. They are very funny in one sense, but I got to read you this. This is from Colin Rugg, who is the co-owner of Trending Politics. Check this out. Texas Governor Greg Abbott says protesters at UT, quote, belong in jail, adding that anti-Semitism will not be tolerated in Texas, end of quote. State troopers and police officers made over 20 arrests on campus, many of them charged with trespassing. Students claim that the protests were peaceful until the police arrived. Quote, okay, here's where I need to play this clip, and then we'll finish this up. But check out this. This is a 30-second clip. Like I said, it's funny, but it's not. So listen to this.
Most definitely. If the police had never came, we would have followed the schedule set out by PSC. It was a variety of scholastic teach-ins, lunch breaks. It was, study hours on the lawn, a peaceful demonstration. And now that the police have come, it has now turned into like a clash of students wanting our own campus sovereignty and UT Austin and UTPD and state troopers trying to quell dissent.
Campus sovereignty? You want your own campus sovereignty? Okay, I have a question for you guys. Who do those campuses belong to? If it's a state-owned university, do those campuses belong to the state that pays the money for those campuses to exist, or do they belong to the students? What's this nonsense of campus sovereignty? In loco parentes. Yeah, it should belong to the state. It should absolutely belong to the state. Campus sovereignty. That's a fascinating concept, a little frightening too. But Abbott went on to say that he calls for all anti-Semitic students to be expelled from the school. Okay, no. There's where I don't agree with him. Quote, students joining in hate-filled anti-Semitic protest at any public college university in Texas should be expelled, according to Abbott. All right, let's back up and talk about some of this for a second. Okay. Here's where I'm at in this. An individual or individuals, but the individual in particular, has a right to be stupid. Unfortunately, in America, not only do they have the right to be stupid, they have the protections of the First Amendment that if they decide to demonstrate they're stupid, they can do it. Okay. All that said, I'm sorry, I may not like what's going on these campuses, but absent these kids out and out breaking the law or breaking policy of the university, but let's just confine it to breaking the law, okay? Absent them breaking the law, they've got the right to display their views and express them however they wish. Okay. Yeah. And now here's the distinction though. A peaceful protest is one thing, a riot is something else. I'll agree with you on that one, brings a sword. I'll absolutely agree with you on that one. Okay. But they've got their idea that they may be protesting on behalf of may be as stupid as that can possibly be, but they've got the right to do it. This is where I disagree with Abbott. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not in any way, shape, or form saying anti-Semitism is a good thing. Heck no. No, absolutely not. Okay. Call you Seabass. That's interesting. All right. Seabass it is. All right. Oh, CBAS. Now I see what you're getting at. Okay. Seabass. All right, I can live with that. I mean, yeah, you got the right to express the most stupid, idiotic idea that you want to. But provide you're not breaking the law, no, you shouldn't be locked up in jail for it. I mean, are we going to have such a reaction in this country on the other side of it, from the right ideological perspective, the right side of the ideological spectrum, let me put it that way. Are we going to have this kind of reaction where we don't like anti-Semitic statements and now we're going to start locking people up in jail? I'm sorry. We're going to become the very thing that we are accusing the left of being. And not only accusing, by the way, they're actually doing it. All right. So, no, I do not want to see these kids locked up. Like I said, I don't think anti-Semitism is a good thing. I don't want to see it espoused, whatever, but I'm not going to start locking them up for it. I think Greg Abbott is going over the top with this one. Okay. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of things that Greg Abbott does in Texas I'm all in favor of. This is one of those moments he's screwing up, and I don't care to say it. Erosion of our free speech right in any form. Exactly. I'll agree with that 100%. So there are different reactions around the country to what's going on. I don't know if you guys have seen that. I just found this morning, and I thought I'd bring it to your attention. Check this out. This is from the LA Times. At USC, there are arrests. At UCLA, hands off. Why pro-Palestinian protests have not blown up on UC campuses. This is an article by Teresa Watanabe. Yeah. At USC, LA police officers in riot gear swarmed the campus, arresting 93 pro-Palestinian protesters and clearing their tent encampment. Across town at UCLA, scores of Palestinian supporters set up about 20 tents, created a perimeter around their, quote, Palestine Solidarity encampment, and peacefully protested day and night, all without arrests, suspensions, or intervention by the campus staff, who watched from the sidelines. Private security guards on bikes separated the pro-Palestinian group from Israel supporters, and UCLA eventually added metal barricades after counter-protesters repeatedly tried to breach the encampment, and at least one case witnessed by the Times entered and shoved a woman to the ground. The scenes this week illustrated a starkly different response to campus protests, which are sweeping the country as students at more than 20 colleges and universities have launched encampments, demonstrations, or other actions to express solidarity with Palestinians, urge an end to Israel's military operations in Gaza, and demand divestment from firms that do business with Israel. USC, along with other private institutions such as Columbia and Pomona, have cracked down on violations of campus rules with police force and student arrests. In the public University of California system, by contrast, UCLA, UC Berkeley, and UC Santa Barbara have used a far lighter hand, tolerating students who flouted bans on overnight camping and other bans as long as they remained peaceful and did not impede campus operations or interfere with teaching and learning. Part of the difference is rooted in the legal requirement for universities to honor the First Amendment. Now, wait a minute. Now, hang on a second. I got to read that again. Part of the difference is rooted in the legal requirement for public universities to honor the First Amendment. Excuse me. As though private institutions are not required to honor the First Amendment as well? That seems like an absolutely crazy statement to me, but all right, let's keep reading. But not all public campuses have refrained from aggressive response. University of Texas at Austin, for instance, sent in armed state troopers who arrested more than 50 people this week for staging what witnesses said was a peaceful protest. The university president, defending his response as legitimate action to maintain campus order, is facing a faculty vote of no confidence. Okay. So everybody's trying to handle this thing differently. And it's like, what do you do here? What do you do? You know, it's just an amazing, amazing time to be trying to figure out, how this should go down. What do you do? I don't know. Well, let me back up a second. Let me take that back. I do know what you do to fix this, or at least I think I've got an idea of what you do to fix this. And before we get to that, I want to read you part of an article I found this morning on Newsweek. This one is really good. Pay zero in taxes. They're beholden for the hang on to that thought, Dave, because we're going to get to something that I think you're going to find interesting. But before we do, I want to read this article from Newsweek. And you got to ask yourself the question. How much good are these protesters doing the folks in Gaza? Now, the protesters have the right to protest. I'm not saying that they don't. This is still America. You still have the right to freedom of speech and freedom of assembly. Okay, fine. But how much good are these protesters really doing? Well, from one person's perspective, they're not really doing a whole lot of good, and they might very well be doing harm. I want you guys to check this out. This is an article from Newsweek magazine. Message from a Gazan to campus protesters: you're hurting the Palestinian cause. Ooh. This is an article by Hamza Hawadi. Protests are spreading across the United States at college campuses where university students are gathering in the name of Palestinian rights and occupying campus spaces with tents. Sadly, not everyone who purports to support Palestinians is truly interested in safeguarding our rights. Oh, this is about to get spicy. It pains me to say this as a Palestinian from Gaza. As my home is destroyed and too many are killed, I never thought I would find myself criticizing those speaking up. And yet I cannot be silent about what I am seeing. The truth is that the manner in which many gather to voice their support for Palestinians does more to hurt our cause than to help it. You know what would help the Palestinians in Gaza? Condemning Hamas's atrocities. Instead, the protesters routinely chant their desire to globalize the Intifada. Apparently, they do not realize that the Intifadas were disastrous for both the Palestinians and the Israelis, just as the October 7th has been devastating for the people of Gaza. They should be speaking up for the innocent victims of Hamas, both Palestinian and Israeli. Instead, they endorse Hamas's ideology with posters announcing resistance, quote, by any means necessary, and chants of from the river to the sea, effectively glorifying the Al-Qassam brigades, Hamas's military wing, whose ideology is entirely based on the elimination of more than 6 million Israelis from the land. I assumed individuals who initiated these slogans were uninformed about what they were advocating for. I saw the LGBTQ flag frequently flown among people chanting lines from Hamas's charter. I initially wanted to educate them, to warn them that the group they are honoring would most likely toss them from the roof of a building or murder them like they did Muhammad Ishtiwi, a Hamas commander accused of homosexuality. Hamas harasses women who don't cover their heads. Hamas tortures those who demonstrate against their authoritarian rule, as they did me when I protested. All of this seems to be lost on the people who have named themselves our allies, much to our misfortune. Hate speech on college campuses, starting with the one at Columbia, has recently reached a frightening pitch. I've seen people yelling anti-Semitic things at Jewish students, including Jews go back to Poland and other horrible phrases. It has deteriorated to the point that Jews are no longer attending university classes due to the current hostile environment. and they are attending their classes online to avoid demonstrators. It's unconscionable, but it's not just the anti-Semitism that has me despairing, it's the hypocrisy. Where were these caring young people when Hamas took over Gaza and slaughtered hundreds of Gazans, or where Hamas held 2 million Gazans captive for more than 17 years? Why didn't they speak about the fact that Hamas led Gazans into this conflict, which resulted in more than 30,000 dead and 80,000 injured, according to Gaza municipal authorities? Where were they when Hamas failed missiles claimed the lives of hundreds of Gazans on October 17th? Or when Hamas murdered young people in order to steal aid and resell it to the Gazans at massively inflated prices? The only conclusion that can be drawn from these demonstrators' silence concerning Hamas's atrocities and their anti-Semitic chanting is that they are not concerned with protecting Palestinians. They are out in their tents because of a hatred of Jews and Israelis. As a Gazan and a Palestinian, I want the protesters and the organizers of these protests to know that their hateful speech harms us. The Jewish person or Israeli you are intimidating during your rally may be the granddaughter of a Holocaust survivor or a family member of an Israeli slain or abducted by Hamas on October 7th. These folks would be your partners if the protests were about achieving lasting peace and justice for Palestinians and Israelis. I do not accept hateful speech or terrorist chants. And all of these foolish dreams about eradicating Israel are disgusting and will never be achieved. Both of us, the Palestinians and the Israelis, are here to stay. But the protesters aren't interested in peace. Some of the groups who have been blocking Palestinian peace activists like me, and I am from Gaza, the very place they claim to care about. Instead of blocking peace activists, they should be inviting us to join these protests and guide them in the right direction. A place without hatred, with a focus on calling for the release of the hostages who have been held captive by Hamas for more than 210 days. If the protesters cared about Palestinians, they would have one central demand: Hamas must surrender because we have all suffered from Hamas and can no longer live under the rule of a terrorist group. Only then can a ceasefire be achieved. That is a great article. And I'm going to throw this in chat because this definitely, this definitely ought to be read. I recommend it to you. TBA over on Rumble says, "Aw, crap, I'm late again." Howdy. Hi, chat. TBA, you're welcome as always. Glad to have you. Glad to have you. So I have a question for everybody. And I'm very sincere with this, and I'm leading up to something. What do we do to fix this? I mean, there are solutions that ought to be implemented on so many different levels, but what do we do to fix this? Okay. Like I said, I respect the right of every individual to speak their opinion. Okay. You do not have the right, however, to break the law. Okay. Now, I came across a column this morning that it's by one of my favorite authors, by the way. I just don't read that much of his stuff anymore. And I don't know if it's because he has slowed down on his writing, or he's not being as published as much as he once was. But I want to take you to the New York Post because Cal Thomas has an absolutely fabulous column this morning. And he absolutely brings up something from history that might be very helpful in this moment. So again, this is from the New York Post. Headline: Take a tip from Ronald Reagan on handling campus protests. This was published yesterday, and again, it's by the inestimable Cal Thomas. And if you're not familiar with his writing, you ought to be, because this guy, the thing I love about Cal Thomas is the common sense in his writing. Okay? He's very matter of fact and very down to earth, and his writing has a very commonsensical feel to it. So I really recommend him to you. But let's take a look at what he's got to say. And again, this ran in yesterday's New York Post. The year was 1966, and Ronald Reagan was running for governor of California. A major part of his platform was to, quote, clean up the mess at Berkeley. Well, I got bad news for you, Ronnie. You failed on that one. And other college campuses throughout the state that were experiencing protests and strikes over issues that included the military draft, civil rights, and, quote, women's issues. While that wasn't on the scale of the pro-Hamas, anti-Israel, anti-America, and anti-Jewish hatred we are witnessing now on several college campuses, Reagan's response could instruct current college presidents and admissions officers to quell the unrest. The Gilder Lehrman Institute of American History has preserved Reagan's remarks and later actions as governor. In a campaign speech, Reagan said that many leftist movements had transcended legitimate protest with the actions of, quote, beatniks, radicals, and filthy speech advocates having more to do with, quote, rioting and anarchy than academic freedom. He faulted universities' administrators and faculty who, quote, pressed their particular value judgments on students for a leadership gap and a morality and decency gap on campus, suggested a code of conduct be imposed on faculty to force them to serve as examples of good behavior and decency. Morality, good behavior, and decency appeared to be electives, not requirements, on too many of today's campuses whose students, and apparently not all our students, are now running the institutions of what might be called lower learning. 6 months after becoming governor in 1967, Reagan wrote a letter to Glenn Dumke, the chancellor of San Francisco State College, who opposed the unrest occurring on many California campuses. In the letter, Reagan condemned these people and this trash who used, quote, the excuse of academic freedom and freedom of expression to justify continuation of the protests. Quote, we wouldn't allow this kind of language in front of our families, Reagan wrote. He called on Dumke to lay down some rules of conduct and promise you'd have all the backing that I could give you. We need to hear more this type of talk to counter the anarchist and hatred of Jews and Israel and support of terrorist organizations on today's college campuses. Even more than talk, action is needed. The Rockefeller Brothers Fund and the Open Society Foundation, headed by George Soros, have reportedly been contributing hundreds of thousands of dollars to leftist organizations that funnel money to groups that are behind the campus upheavals. At a minimum, the IRS should take a look at their tax-exempt status to see if they have violated regulations pertaining to what is allowable for nonprofits. And Dave, this goes to the point you were bringing up earlier. You had mentioned, let me find your quote again. Hang on. Why does every school pay zero in taxes? They are beholden to our federal government. Harvard has a $50 billion endowment. Think about that for a minute. 501c3s aren't allow this BS. Yeah, exactly right. And that is what Cal Thomas is bringing up here. Okay. And that is, at a minimum, we should take a look at their tax exempt status. Getting back to Cal Thomas's article, the government should look at whether or not shouting anti-Semitic and anti-American slogans are here on, if they're doing it, are you here on student visas? If they are, those visas should be revoked and the students deported. Others who are found guilty giving aid and comfort to terrorists should be expelled. Some wealthy donors to Columbia University and other schools have pledged to withdraw financial support if order and decorum are not restored. All of this feeds the view that America is coming apart. Where are the leaders like Reagan who label this behavior for what it is and then do something about it? Reagan ended his letter to Dumke with the question that should answer itself. Quote, hasn't the time come to take on these neurotics in our faculty group and lay down some rules of conduct for the students comparable to what we'd expect in our own families? If that time had come in 1967, surely it is long past due in 2024. That is absolute. I'm going to put this one in chat as well. TBA over on Rumble says, did you hear about the high-ranking professor who got arrested the other day for being part of a peaceful protest? She was totally shocked that she got the cuffs slapped on her. Yeah, we were mentioning that at Emory University. She kept yelling, "I'm an economics professor. I'm an economics professor." Well, yeah, you slapped a cop upside the head, woman. What'd you think the cop was going to do? Yeah, and this is something I want to ask Dr. McCutcheon about this on Thursday, because I know she's got to have an opinion. First of all, if I know Robin McCutcheon, she's got an opinion about what's going on with these college campuses. I cannot wait to get her take on this, because you know that she's going to have something to say about it. But I think Cal Thomas is right when he's pointing out Reagan's example. Why are we not setting up codes of conduct for students, and more particularly faculty? If these students are here on a visa and they're found to be doing this stuff, deport them. Go ahead. We're not going to put up with this. Off. Be gone. You're not going to come here to do this sort of thing. I have not a problem in the world, one, with the idea of codes of conduct for faculty or students. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when I used to live under one when I was an undergraduate. So I have no problem at all with this idea. I mean, I've been asking the question, and I think you guys, privately or publicly have been doing the same thing. How do you stop this? Well, my question is, where's the university's administrations putting their foot down on this stuff? I mean, if you have a policy in place that prevents people from overnight camping on your commons, okay, send in campus security, take it down. If they will not leave peacefully on their own, do something about it. I'm not saying I want to see authoritarianism on college campus, although you could make an argument we have ideological authoritarianism because of how far left these campuses have gone. But I don't want to see, heavy-handed authoritarianism. I want to see a campus that runs, beautifully and is ideologically diverse, even if I don't necessarily agree with the ideas. WWG1 over on Rumble says a lot of these people on these campus protests aren't even students at all. They travel around the country like a three-ring circus. And that's a great point. Some of this stuff that's being fomented isn't even being done by the students. Okay. I'd be very curious to find out how many of these agitators on college campuses, number one, are not even students. And number two, how many of them came across the southern border? Are they even American citizens? I'd kind of like to know, Oh, my word. So, yeah, that's what's going on college campuses these days. It's sad. It's amazing and sad all at the same time. So, what time is it? Oh my goodness, it's almost noon. It's about 11:55 on Saturday morning. My name is Brian Trippett. I am the Front Porch Conservative. Please do me a favor. If you're not subbed to my channel on YouTube and Rumble, give me a sub. I genuinely appreciate it. Also, hit the thumbs up if you're here. It helps out a whole lot. A whole lot. So yeah, do me a favor. Hit the thumbs up. And good morning, Professor. Good to see you. Sorry, folks, couldn't get to the mute button fast enough. Good morning, Christian Watson. Glad to have you here. And we're going to shift gears, and I've got quite a few stories up here for Hodgepodge Stew. And there's some stuff that happened this week. Okay, let's just get right into it. We're on YouTube, we're on Rumble, we're on Twitter. So let's get right into it. Did you guys hear about the truth bomb that got dropped on MSNBC this week? Holy cow. Now, I've seen the clip. I'm going to play it here in a minute. I'm going to let this thing go. I am not going to interrupt this. I don't think I will anyway. But an author came on to promote his book, and I tell you what, the look on the face of the MSNBC host when this guy was dropping his comment, holy cow. I'm going to play this. It runs about just a little under 2 minutes, but every bit of it is worth it. Y'all do me a favor, check this out and tell me what you think, because this is just amazing.
For the first time in our nation's history, a 30-year-old man or woman isn't doing as well as his or her parents were at 30. That is the social compact breaking down. People aged 30 to 34, 60% of them in 1990 had one child. Now it's 27%. People are opting out of America. They're not optimistic about it. They're not having kids. Young people aren't having sex. They're not meeting. They're not mating. The pool of emotionally and economically viable men shrinks every day, which lessens household formation. So we have a real issue. Young people are enraged. So it turns every cut, every movement into an opportunistic infection because, quite frankly, they are just pissed off. They look up, they see wealth, exceptional wealth across my generation and people in certain industries, and they are really struggling. Their purchasing power is going down, and the incumbents create artificial scarcity on campus. We take pride in rejecting 90% of our applicants, so the incumbents who already have a degree see their degree go up in value. We get very concerned with housing and traffic once we own the housing. Housing permits are sequestered from young people. Housing prices have gone from $290 to $420 in the last 4 years. So a young person, a house, stocks that I don't own skyrocket in value. Let's have COVID relief and flush the markets and take assets way up, because if 1 million people dying would be bad, it would be tragic if I got less wealthy. And we're doing it on their credit card. Young people have every reason to be enraged, and every issue they see, they look up, they get angry, and they see someone doing better than them. And then every day it is speedballed in their face that they are failing, that they are not doing as well as everyone around them. We have lost the script. Our kids are more anxious, they're more depressed, they're more obese, they're more addicted. And we have made a purposeful decision to let this happen by ensuring that people around this table stay wealthy at the cost of young people. So for the
Wow. When I heard that the other day, no, I'm saving that one. It may not be done today, but I'm saving that one for a reason. That's probably going to wind up being a video. Did you guys hear? I mean, this guy, look, he's an author. He's an economist at a New York university. I don't know his politics. And in one sense, I don't really care. But everything that man said, if we're looking for an indictment of a lot of the economic system that is America today and the effects that it's having and what it's doing, that man said more in 2 minutes than a lot of politicians will ever say in 2 years. That man just summed up brilliantly why young people in this country are doing what they're doing, or they're engaging in the behaviors that they're engaging in, be it socially, economically, on the question of marriage, on the question of staying single. I mean, that, you know what? I'm sorry. I'm normally, I don't do this, but everything he said just bears repeating. I want to go through this again. So, and we'll stop this at points we need to, but this just, oh my God. I mean, when I heard this the other day, it blew my mind, and it's still worth going through. Check this out again.
first time in our nation's history, a 30-year-old man or woman isn't doing as well as his or her parents were at 30. That is the social compact breaking down. People aged 30 to 34, 60% of them in 1990 had one child. Now it's 27%. People are opting out of America. They're not optimistic about it. They're not having kids.
Now, I do want to say something here, and I'm not necessarily trying to get this into a political context, but a lot has been made about why it is that in this year's presidential election, that a Republican in Donald Trump is doing as well as he is doing with voting age 18 to 29, or let's just say under 40. Okay, let's just say 35. I'll even do that. 35 on down. Okay. A lot of people have been wondering why. Why is Trump doing as well as he's doing? Well, could it very well be, and by the way, This is not to say that Trump's got all the answers or that Trump is the ultimate solution. I don't think he is. There is no one man or woman that if they wave their version of the magic wand, they cure all of America's problems. It's just not going to happen. Okay? But a lot of young people, and I say young people, let's say age 18 to 35, are looking at Trump and they're saying, dude, I remember how it was for my parents when you were in office. And I remember what I've got to deal with right now as an adult. And I wish someone could make it easier for me, where I just don't feel like I'm fighting everything. WWG1 over on Rumble says some magic wands are bigger than others. Well, you ain't wrong there. You know, but let's continue with this because, I mean, like I say, this all bears hearing again.
Young people aren't having sex. They're not.
That's a big problem in more ways than one.
Meeting. They're not mating. The pool of emotionally and economically viable men shrinks every day, which lessens household formation. So we have a real issue. Young people are enraged. So it turns every cut, every movement into an opportunistic infection because, quite frankly, they are just pissed off.
And there's no doubt about that. And no, we're not talking about the pissed off of the protest on college campus. How many people do we all run into? Me, you, everybody watching this. Okay. And they're angry. They're just angry about everything in one form or another. Yeah, and U-Haul, I agree with this too. Yeah, she too, Chase. Yeah, I'll agree with that to a certain extent. But how many angry young people are we coming across? And they're drowning that anger either in alcohol or pills or destructive behaviors of one form or another. Anyway, let's get back to this.
They look up, they see wealth, exceptional wealth across my generation and people in certain industries, and they are really struggling. Their purchasing power is going down, and the incumbents create artificial scarcity on campus. We take pride in rejecting 90% of our applicants, so the incumbents who already have a degree see their degree go up in value. We get very concerned with housing and traffic once we own the housing. Housing permits are sequestered from young people. Housing prices have gone from $290 to $420 in the last 4 years. So a young person, a house, stocks that I don't own, skyrocket in value. Let's have COVID relief and flush the markets and take assets way up, because if 1 million people dying would be bad, it would be tragic if I got less wealthy. And we're doing it on their credit card.
You know, he brought up something, and I think it does bear discussing. There has always been attention paid to the economic gap in America. In other words, here's the rich and here's the poor. But we've always felt like there was a middle class in this country that, you know, it's solid, it's stable, it's there. And I will put myself in this, okay? I would say, well, okay, I'm not rich, but I'm not poor either. I own a home, I have a roof over my head, I have clothes on my back, I have food in my belly, I've got a job. Okay, maybe I'm not making 6 or 7 figures like some people, but I'm doing okay. I'm all right. More and more and more, that middle class is shrinking all the time. And you've got a generation of young people that are looking at that and they're like, when do I get my share? When do I get my shot? How come this guy over here, he's just all good and wonderful and his life is glorious? And don't get me wrong, personal choices affect your economics. Okay, I'm not saying that, individuals bear no responsibility for where they are. But when people keep looking up and saying, well, these guys have got all the advantages and I'm not getting any advantages. Why did they get all the advantages? Why does it seem like that the system is built for them as opposed to it all being equal for everybody. And, we arrive at where we arrive at starting in an equal plane. It seems like the system is built in to take care of some people and not all the rest of us. That's getting dangerous. And it's not necessarily a dangerous question, but when it gets to the point that kind of mentality seeps in, regardless of whether it's true or not, you have a system that starts breaking down. Yeah, and like I said a moment ago, the choices affect, your economics, and I agree with that. I mean, here, perfect example: 27 years old, owns a nice home, makes six figures, works hard, and is able. Yeah, and I agree with that completely. But there is a group of people out there, well, you can argue right, wrong, otherwise, that are sitting around, they're looking at everything that's being done, and they're saying, "What about us?" Now let's pull that back to a political context for a second, okay? I saw, who was it over on Rumble? Was it TBA or was it WWG1? Hang on a minute, I gotta find this, because this is definitely worth commenting on, because I saw this just a second ago. Yeah, it was TBA. The Obama administration was deliberately destroying the economy in order to usher in what they call the Great Reset. I can't necessarily disagree with that. But laying aside individuals and personalities, let's just lay aside names for a second. Do you get the feeling that the economic system that's being set up in this country is being done so to the benefit of a small percentage? I mean, apparently these young people do. But let's get back to this, because like I say, some of this is worth discussing.
Young people have every reason to be enraged, and every issue they see, they look up, they get angry, and they see someone doing better than them. And then every day it is speedballed in their face that they are failing, that they are not doing as well as everyone around them. We have lost the script. Our kids are more anxious and more depressed and more obese and more addicted. And we have made a purposeful decision to let this happen by ensuring the people around this table stay wealthy at the cost of young people.
Oh, now don't you think that the hosts at MSNBC didn't hear that and they were like, "Ooh, how dare you?" But is he wrong? Is he wrong? The professional class, the journalistic class, the elites, however you want to define that, they got theirs. They're doing just fine. But for everybody who's suffering under inflation and high housing costs and a very tight job market where wages are not keeping up with prices, it hurts like hell. Now, should anger be the response? Nah, if it's blind anger that doesn't, something productive doesn't come out of it, no, I don't think that should be the response. But I don't think that anger should just be blind. Do something with it. Do something productive with it. Yeah, we have quit replacing ourselves. And from a young people's perspective, okay, I can't get the job that I have will not support me and my wife and my kids. I'm not saying that's the only reason that young people aren't marrying these days or having kids, but that's one of them. It's frightening where we're heading here. Anyway, back to the comment. We're almost done. Yeah, we are done, actually. I mean, yeah, I heard this clip and this was just amazing. Just amazing. In 2 minutes, I got to put this one in here too. Got to do it. I mean, this guy said more in 2 minutes than a lot of people will ever say in 2 years. And every bit of it was just great. Just great. Well, let's shift gears and talk a little campaign stuff. I mean, and not court stuff. I didn't say court stuff. I said campaign stuff. There is a presidential campaign that's happening in America this year, although you would think it was taking place in courtrooms all around America. But there is an actual campaign that's taking place. So apparently Joe Biden has had a moment of lucidity, or somebody told him, hey, Joe, you need to go out and say this. Well, he's now apparently agreed he wants to debate Trump. This is from the New York Post. Biden says he will debate Trump before the presidential election despite reluctance. Article by Stephen Nelson and Diana Glebova. We have the following. President Biden said Friday he will face off with former President Donald Trump on the debate stage ahead of their rematch on November 5th, ending speculation after the 81-year-old president last month said it depends on his behavior. I am somewhere, I don't know when, but I am happy to debate him, Biden told satellite radio host Howard Stern in a rare, wide-ranging interview lasting more than an hour. So, okay, at this moment in time, Biden is willing to debate Trump. We'll see how that goes. And in other campaign news, now last week we discussed Joe Biden's appearance at a local Sheetz gas station in Pennsylvania, right? And it did not go well, at least from my perspective. And I'm not just saying that, from a purely partisan standpoint. I'm talking about from the perspective of staging of an event. There was very little interaction. What interaction there was felt very sterile. It felt very scripted. And it lasted maybe just a couple of minutes, but it just did not go over well. Okay. Well, yeah, really. Lest you think that things in this campaign cannot. Oh, yeah, people were screaming. They were screaming that at him, which I've got a clip here in a minute. I got to play it for you. You're going to love this. Speaking of that particular phrase, well, just when you thought things could not get any more strange in election 2024, it turns out that Biden is suing Sheetz. You heard me. Biden is suing the Sheetz Corporation. Check this out. This is from the wonderful Selena Zito, probably one of the best writers in America today. If you're not following her work at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette or the Washington Examiner or her own website, do it. Selena is just like Cal Thomas. Very commonsensical. Probably one of the best reporters you're ever going to read. And man, does she have just a wonderful touch when it comes to writing and painting pictures with words. She is amazing. But check this out. The Washington Examiner. Biden's lawsuit against Sheetz gas station will enrage Pennsylvania voters. This is Dateline, Altoona, Pennsylvania. The oldest gas station in America is still in operation. Rygards here in the Blair County city got its start in 1908 when a local blacksmith decided to sell gasoline out of the back of his shop when the Model T was introduced. It's been open ever since. While architecturally it is underwhelming, the service is good because the people who work there care about the work they do. Whether it is pumping gas, washing your windshield, or doing minor fixes on your car, it is important to them that you return. While Rygards holds the title of the oldest gas station in America, it's another Altoona family that puts a different kind of gas station excellence on the map. The Sheetz family store is one of struggles. This family-friendly service station struggled with a salmonella outbreak back in 2004, but it retained a deeply local customer base and expanded well beyond its western Pennsylvania roots. Ask any traveler in Pennsylvania, West Virginia, Maryland, Ohio, or North Carolina, and they tell you when they see the cheery red and yellow stations along their drives, Sheetz means quality and comfort to their loyal customers. One very loyal and vocal customer is Senator John Fetterman, Democrat, Pennsylvania, the Braddock Democrat, who often posts on his Twitter, his preference for Sheetz over Wawa. the other mega service station based in the state, with cheeky posts such as Sheetz is greater than Wawa. With so much loyalty among residents in the state, it made sense for President Joe Biden to do a photo op at a Sheetz gas station in suburban Pittsburgh last week after his visit with local steelworkers. He wanted to demonstrate that he is no different than any other Pennsylvanian in his affection for the family-owned business. Biden even went so far as to pick up sandwiches for construction workers after pulling the presidential motorcade into the Sheetz gas station in Moon Township. Wearing his aviator glasses, he posed for a selfie with an employee, and that's when things got weird. Just one day after the president's orchestrated Sheetz run, the Biden administration hit the privately held convenience store chain with a federal lawsuit in which I'm sorry, I don't mean to laugh, but it's like, holy cow. The Biden administration hit the privately held convenience store chain with a federal lawsuit in which federal officials say the company discriminated against minority job applicants. The theory, according to the EEOC, is that because the company uses a criminal background check to screen job seekers, somehow that's a violation of Title VII of the '64 Civil Rights Act. The Civil Rights Act prohibits workplace discrimination on the basis of race, sex, religion, and national origin. EEOC attorney Deborah M. Lawrence wrote that the criminal background checks, quote, cause a disparate impact because of race or other protected classifications. All right, now I got to ask you guys a question. Causes a disparate impact because of race or other protected classifications. Am I going too far out on a limb here by saying that she is assuming that minorities commit crimes and therefore, because the criminal background check is picking up at the fact that minorities are committing crimes, that's discrimination? I mean, y'all, somebody, if I'm too far out on the limb here, y'all pull me back in here, but I get the exact feeling that's exactly what she said. Cause a disparate impact because of race or other protected classifications. A criminal background check. That's Lord have mercy. We continue. Minorities have a culture of corruption. We have. All right, let's keep reading before I really get myself in trouble here. Lawrence went on to say that the employment hiring practices must be shown by the employer to be necessary to ensure the safe and efficient performance of the particular jobs at issue. Quote, even when such necessity is proven, the practice remains unlawful if there's an alternative practice available that is comparably effective in achieving the employer's goals but causes less discriminatory effect, Lawrence added. The suit said Sheetz discriminated against Black, Native American, and multiracial job seekers by weeding out applicants who failed a criminal background check. Okay. I just, whoo. Sometimes you have to ask yourself a question. Are there moments when a political candidate is trying to lose the race? Okay. I got to ask this question. I mean, is Joe Biden really trying to lose Pennsylvania? And that's what Democrats of varying stripes throughout the Keystone State are asking. Is he really trying to lose Pennsylvania? Because this will do it. I'm going to say by itself it'll do it, but it'll go a long way toward making people mad, especially around Pittsburgh. Allegheny County, yeah, this is a bad idea. But even the logic on which this is based is crazy. It's just absolutely crazy to me. Okay. Oh, well, now by the way, Joe is apparently he's doing better. He's giving more speeches these days. And I don't know if you guys heard this one or not, but I thought this was one of his finest moments on the campaign trail. Check this out.
Imagine what we can do next. 4 more years. Pause. 4 more years. 4 more years. 4 more years.
Oh my God. Yeah, I heard about this, and when I saw the clip, I was like, you got to be kidding me. He read what the teleprompter said. Quite literally, he read what the teleprompter said. And when the teleprompter tells him to pause, it's just like, there's a reason why I call him soft serve. Unbelievable. But by the way, lest you think that these gaffes that Biden has will continue all the way through November, fear not, my friends. Fear not. Apparently, Joe is getting some very serious help to get over these gaffes. And by the way, also make sure that his campaign is putting forth a good and positive image. And before I get to that, I want to, not always the case. When I was in HR and showed criminal, we still wanted an interview. We would ask about, okay, all right, fair enough. I can see that point. I can see where that would be the case. But Joe's gaffes that he's engaging in, he may be getting some help to try to straighten that out. And where he's getting it from should go a long way toward curing some of his problems, at least for certain parts of the campaign. Did you guys see this headline the other day? Steven Spielberg is involved strategically in the Biden campaign and convention planning. Article by Nick Gilbertson. Multiple reports indicate that Hollywood director Steven Spielberg is strategically working with President Joe Biden's re-election campaign and is helping to plan the Democrat National Convention. Puck Nation's Matt Belloni, was the first to report Spielberg, quote, has been quietly but actively working with the Joe Biden campaign to help choreograph August Democrat National Convention in Chicago, as his colleague Dylan Byers pointed out in a post on Twitter. His work with the campaign includes, quote, participating in multiple strategy sessions on how to best tell the president's story, Belloni explains. The report was confirmed by Deadline and The Hollywood Reporter on Friday, with the reporters Zoe G. Phillips writing Spielberg is joining the Biden campaign, and Deadline's Dominic Patton noting that he will be involved strategically in both the campaign and the convention. Spielberg's representative did not respond to comments requests from the outlets, but one well-placed source told Deadline the Poltergeist director wants to be as helpful as possible to the president. Quote, he believes that this is one of the most important elections in the nation's history, the source told the outlet. Yeah, okay. Well, now, I kind of chuckle at this story, and I do so for a reason. Ruben Christopher Haynes, my good buddy, has been commenting how this election, particularly the fact that the DNC convention is in Chicago, has the potential to be 1968 all over again. And I need to go back and find a copy of Mike Royko's book. It's called Boss. It's the story about Old Man Daley, and in that book, he has a chapter devoted to the 68 convention. Old Man Daley went out of his way to make Chicago glisten like a brand new dime. Okay? And in the end, it didn't help him because the convention spiraled out of control, and the Vietnam protesters on the outside of the convention were being arrested and rounded up in paddy wagons. All of this was being on national TV. It was a disaster. So the reason why I'm chuckling at the notion that Spielberg's going to be involved in this, okay, Spielberg might be able to choreograph and direct what goes on inside the building. You can't control the protesters outside the building. Now, to a certain extent, even if they get in, you'll be able to limit what they do or what they say. It's not unusual at all for conventions to when a protester cuts loose with something and they start shouting over the speaker, that conventioneers will start chanting things like USA, USA, or do other things to distract everybody from what that person's doing. And like I say, Spielberg and the Democrats might be able to help control this on the inside for Joe Biden, but outside the convention hall, that's a whole different ballgame. So, look, Spielberg can support whoever he wants. It's up to him. So there you go, folks. Joe's getting help from Hollywood in a really big way. TBA over on Rumble says, I don't think Chicago's current mayor will be able to do anything to stop the strife that's going to hit. I agree with that. I totally agree with that. I absolutely agree with that. There's only so much you can do. Only so much you can do. So what else is going on in the world by way of hodgepodge stew? Oh, this is a good one. Oh God, Robert's good to see you. I haven't seen you in a while, brother. ET, yeah, ET phone home is right. Yeah, Oh my gosh. So you got that going on. By the by, did you guys hear about the palace intrigue that is currently taking place regarding the press secretary for Joe Biden? This just broke over the. Oh, well, I'm glad. Well, I'm sorry to hear that, sir. But I'm glad you're feeling better. Hope and please continue on the road to recovery. But glad to have you back. Did you guys hear about what's going on? This broke, I guess, yesterday, and apparently it's been going on for a while. But there is a serious amount of palace intrigue going on regarding Biden's press secretary. From the New York Post. This is an article by Stephen Nelson. Headline: Inside the failed White House coup to oust Biden press secretary Karine Jean-Pierre. Oh, this is about to get spicy. Top aides for President Biden secretly hatched a plan this past fall to replace White House press secretary Karine Jean-Pierre by recruiting outside allies to nudge her out the door, the Post has learned. There we go. Sorry about that. Jean-Pierre, who made history in May 2022 by becoming the first Black and openly gay person to hold the position, had developed the exasperating habit of reading canned answers directly from a binder to reporters at regular briefings, offering what her superiors viewed as a less than compelling pitch for the 81-year-old Biden as he readied his re-election campaign. De facto White House communications chief Anita Dunn, the wife of Biden's personal attorney Bob Barr, told colleagues she had decided to call in prominent Democrats to explain to Jean-Pierre that the time was ripe to move on, sources told the Post. Quote, there were a number of people who asked to engage Karine, said one source who heard of the strategy directed from Dunn, whose role as senior advisor has been filled during the past three presidencies by Jared Kushner, Valerie Jarrett, and Karl Rove. The source told the Post that Dunn had claimed White House Chief of Staff Jeff Zients knew about and supported the cloak and dagger scheme to push Jean-Pierre out of the West Wing. There was an effort to have some outside folks who Karine knows and trusts talk to her about why leaving last fall would have made a lot more sense for her and her career, calling it, quote, an effort to encourage her to move along. Jean-Pierre, the person added, had been on the job for a year and a half at that point, which is a pretty standard tenure for a press secretary in what is admittedly a very demanding job. Jeff and Anita to have folks who would try to listen to and trust about what might be wise to do. Jean-Pierre's predecessor, Jen Psaki, who we lovingly refer to as Peppermint Patty, was press secretary for 1 week shy of 16 months before leaving to take a job as a host and analyst at MSNBC. A second source told the Post that Jeff and Anita were trying to find Kyrene a graceful exit because the ugly optics of removing her against her will. No, let's talk about what the ugly optics of this are, okay? Here is when DEI comes back to bite you in the ass. Let's just call it what it is. Okay, you hired an African-American woman. Fine, got no problem with that. You hired an African-American woman who is a lesbian. Fine, got no problem with that. You also hired an African-American woman who's lesbian who is shit at her job. Look, I'm 52 years old. I can remember in my active living memory as a kid, I can remember press secretaries all the way back to the legendary Marlon Fitzwater. And there were others before him, obviously, in my lifetime. But the first one I ever really paid attention to was, yes, I swore. I saw it. Sorry. Apologies for that. I'll put a dollar in the jar short later. Okay. Back to the days of the legendary Marlon Fitzwater, who served through 2 different presidents, Reagan and Bush. Press secretaries have any number of functions, and I get it. You're there to put out a message on behalf of your boss. That's one aspect of it. But she can't even do that competently. Okay? There's always a certain amount of interplay between the press secretary and members of the press. Okay? And there are some pairings that are somewhat legendary. To go back to Marlon Fitzwater, it was Marlon Fitzwater and Sam Donaldson at ABC News. Okay? Currently, it is Karine Jean-Pierre and Peter Doocy of Fox News. Okay? Which, by the way, I got nothing personal against Doocy of Fox News, but if he's the best thing in the White House reporters pool, that pool has seriously gone down in quality. Okay, nothing personal against the guy, but it's not like we're talking about a bunch of, Edward R. Murrows here, okay? But the exchanges between Karine Jean-Pierre and Peter Doocy are almost cringeworthy. Not because of the confrontation that's going on, because he's eating her alive. She can't offer compelling answers to questions. Frankly, if I were a White House reporter, I'd probably fall asleep during these briefings. It's just that bad. I'm not saying she's got to put on a show every time she goes out there, but at some point, it's absolutely, at some point, you've got to give people a reason to think, okay, she actually knows what she's talking about and she knows what she's doing. WWG1 over on Rumble says, don't you find it interesting they haven't kicked Doocy out yet? Why do they continue to let him in? I don't know. Well, that's a good question. That's a great question. But let's get back to this article. The ugly optics of removing her against her will. Quote, there's a huge diversity issue and they're afraid of what folks are going to say, added to this source, who said they learned of the effort from multiple people briefed by Dunn and confirmed by at least one person last week from outside the administration that they did speak with Jean-Pierre. The revelation of Dunn's plan is likely to make for an awkward workplace dynamics. Oh, you think? But it's unlikely to result in Jean-Pierre's departure. Quote, she's been pretty consistent in telling people from the minute she got the job that she was going to stay through the election. I think Karine has decided to stay come hell or high water. No. She's got hers and she ain't moving out of it. So, yeah. There is a simple solution to all this sort of thing. Hire the best qualified person. Doesn't matter if it's a man or woman, black or white, gay or straight. Just hire the best person. And if you don't feel like they're doing the job, to the best of their abilities or what you need in that position, get somebody else. And quit worrying about what everybody's going to think. Just boggles my mind. Really does. Now, what else is going on in the world? Oh, by the by, who was it? Who was it? I got to find this again. Hang on. Oh, yeah. People screaming F you at Joe Biden. Well, they didn't scream it at him this week, but they definitely screamed it to him. Did you guys hear about Trump's visit up to the construction workers up in New York City? Oh, this was great. This is from the Post Millennial. Union workers chant, "We want Trump," as he meets them at NYC job site, which, by the way, there was I think it was a steam fitters union, a steam fitters local up in New York City that endorsed Trump this week. I'm pretty sure my memory's right on that one. But let's go back to the article. Article written by Hannah Nightingale. Arriving in Manhattan Thursday morning, where District Attorney Alvin Bragg's falsified business records case against Trump is set to continue, Trump met with New York City union workers at their job site who gathered to express their support. The workers were heard chanting, "We love Trump" and "USA." Trump was seen shaking hands with workers as they continued chanting their support of the former president. Trump is in Manhattan at the Supreme Court in D.C. Is in Manhattan as the Supreme Court in D.C. is set to hear the presidential immunity arguments. Judge Juan Merchan prohibited Trump from attending these hearings on the first day of the trial. Well, I said that they didn't scream F you at Joe Biden, but they definitely screamed it such that he no doubt heard it. This clip has now gone viral around the internet, and I never get tired of playing this. So hang on, folks, and we'll get to this one. And it runs about 12 seconds, but it's worth every bit of it.
What's it like seeing so many Republicans in Manhattan, so many Trump supporters in Manhattan? Does that surprise you?
No, not at all. It's turning now. Trump's turn again.
What's your message to Joe Biden?
Fuck you.
Oh, God, I love New Yorkers. I swear I do. I love New Yorkers. Now, we've been talking about this for quite some time now, and there is always a certain amount of, what word do I want to use here? Word or phrase? Okay. There's always a certain amount of matter-of-fact gruffness to New Yorkers. And it's not to say that they're being rude necessarily. Some of them can be, not all. There's some folks up in New York City that I love and adore, and I think they're just fabulous people. But there is a certain amount of matter-of-fact gruffness to New Yorkers. They will always tell you exactly what they think. Colorfully, might I add. Okay? So if you're not quite ready to hear what they gotta say, you probably should not ask them their opinion, because they'll tell you in various interesting and colorful ways what they really think. So when a reporter says to a construction worker in the NYC, "What's your message to Joe Biden?" Fuck you. I'm not surprised. And this is just, to me, one more example. And again, I have no idea what's going to happen in New York State in November. But don't be shocked, folks. Don't be shocked at all if Donald Trump makes New York State way more competitive than what it usually is for a Republican. I think we were looking at it last week, as a matter of fact. The last the closest, I don't remember now, the closest that a Republican has gotten in New York State in the going all the way back to 1988 was about 4.5 points. Okay. And that was Poppy Bush against Michael Dukakis. Dukakis took New York State by 4.5 points. And after that, the Democrats never looked back. Usually it's almost guaranteed 20, 25 point win for the Democrats. The last Republican to take New York State was Reagan in 84. Okay. And he won New York State by like 9 points. Okay. So it's been a long time since the Republicans have won New York State. And do I think Trump's going to win it in November? Not necessarily. If you're just going by purely historical trend, I don't think he takes New York. But it would not surprise me if he gets it within anywhere between 3 and 7 points. It really would not surprise me. Anywhere between 3 and 7 points in New York State this year. I wouldn't be shocked by that at all. If he took it, I will be shocked. But yeah, it's going to be much, much closer. Well, I'll tell you what, let's wrap it up with a series of stories that I will classify under the heading, be careful what you advocate for, as it may someday come back to haunt you. Now, if you're wondering what I'm talking about, let us turn our attentions to the golden state of California. And it has been known for the longest time that California is very, how shall I phrase this? California is very, shall we say, accommodating on the question of what do you do if a criminal commits a crime. In other words, some people have the old-fashioned, lock them up and throw away the key mentality. California is a little more progressive in terms of how they deal with criminals, and have been for quite some time, as a matter of fact. Well, it's perhaps reached the point that some of that progressiveness is coming back to haunt the people who put it in place, and they may be ready to rethink what they should do about criminals and crime in the state of California. We go to the New York Post. Headline: Representative Adam Schiff's luggage is swiped from a car in San Francisco, forcing him to attend a fancy dinner in casual wear. Article by Kenneth Garger. We have the following. California Representative Adam Schiff found out firsthand about San Francisco crime when his luggage was swiped from his car in a parking garage Thursday, forcing him to attend a fancy dinner in casual wear, according to the report. The Democrat, who is also running to replace the late Dianne Feinstein in the Senate, was in the city for a few days and had parked his car in a downtown garage before a gathering with supporters, the San Francisco Chronicle reported. But before the dinner at Restaurante Roca in nearby Burlingame took place, he fell victim to a car break-in, losing his bags, which left him without a suit for the occasion. Yes, they took my bag, Schiff confirmed to the Chronicle, but I'm here to thank Joe, he added, referring to a high-profile lawyer, Joe Cotchett, who is backing his Senate bid. I guess this is a picture of Mr. Cotchett and his family member. I guess it's welcome to Chicago, Cotchett's spokesperson Lee Housekeeper bluntly told the newspaper. A photo from the restaurant obtained by the publication shows Schiff was the most dressed-down diner at his table. The lawmaker was spotted standing up and offering remarks while wearing a long-sleeve shirt under a hiking vest. Well, can you? Well, Well, there is a follow-up to this story. There is good news. Schiff's luggage was found, and however, I think they were more interested in his clothes than perhaps some of the other articles that he had in his suitcase. Like I said, we do have pictures of Adam Schiff's suitcase. So, just to let you know, Adam, it's okay now. Adam Schiff got his luggage back. Like I said, I think they were really, really interested in his suits because I guess he uses a really good tailor because everything else in the suitcase, they more or less left alone. But thank God for him, he got most of his possessions back, absent his very well-tailored suits. So there you go. Right. But that's not the only California politician who's having problems with crime these days. Okay. Check this out. This one kind of just blew my mind. I can and cannot believe it, but how bad. I mean, look, let's be honest about it. Democrat politicians live as a protected class. Now, what am I talking about? Well, we plebes down here might have to deal with crime and, other issues related to it, et cetera, and so on. But, oh, no. We Democrats, we don't have these problems. No walls on the southern border for you plebes. But if we want a wall in front of our house, well, by George, we have to keep the riffraff out. We're not going to deal with the hoi polloi, you understand? So there's always a certain amount of understanding, at least in the era in which we find ourselves, that Democrats are a protected class. There's rules for them, rules for us, rules for thee, but not for me. Okay. Well, how bad is it getting in California when the Democrat protected class are experiencing the same kind of issues related to crime that you and I would otherwise have to deal with on a regular basis? Okay. So that said, that gets us to our next story about a California politician suffering through problems. The mayor of Los Angeles has had her home broken into again. Okay. Folks, do me a favor and check this out.
Breaking news at 6, a break-in at the home of LA Mayor Karen Bass. And within the last hour, detectives revealed new information about what happened. The break-in happened early this morning, and the intruder has now been arrested.
Let's get right to NBC4's Anastasia Olmos, who's live outside the mayor's home with new details. Stasi.
That's right. This happened early this morning, but LAPD is still here, we're told, conducting their investigation. Detectives tell us that this man broke in through essentially a glass door type window. He cut himself and he made him throughout the entire home before they got here and arrested him. The mayor was home, but she is unharmed. So take a look at the video. It happened around 6:40 this morning. The man broke in, as I said, cutting himself on the glass of the window. And according to police, he made his way throughout the entire home before they responded. They came immediately once they were alerted to the mayor's house alarm. And as they opened the front door, they tell us the man was standing there. They were able to arrest him without incident. Now,
oh my God. Now, hang on. Look, regardless of the fact that I think most Democrat politicians let me rephrase this. Let me be very careful here. I think most of the positions that Democrats hold make no sense whatsoever, are not serving anybody's interest other than their own. I don't wish crime be visited on anybody. Okay? I think Paul Pelosi's been helping his wife enrich the two of them for years, okay? But I don't want to see what happened to Paul Pelosi happen to him. And I don't want to see this happen to Karen Bass, even though I might disagree with her politically. Do I think it serves them right that it's happening to him? In one sense, absolutely, but I don't want to see it happen to anybody. You know. But yeah, so then you got one more. And this one's also made the rounds on social media. The mayor of San Jose is trying to do an interview, right? Okay. And I want you to watch what happens here. This, yeah, it was the second time that it happened to her. So I don't know what's going on with her security detail out there, but something's up. I'm really shocked this is happening. But anyway, here's the mayor of San Jose, California. Watch what happens to this poor guy. Check this out.
Yeah, bro, this is a bunch of young inbred but I would not let him go in there if we can. I don't know. You want to say something stupid? Drop Edward just slapped him in the face. Sorry, we're doing an interview, sir. Oh, you doing an interview? Yeah. Oh, yeah, I'm moving on. I work right there. I'm talking on the phone. You got a problem? Yeah, we're just trying to do it. Okay, cool. I appreciate you, Mike. Yeah, you should mind your yeah. I'm gonna go do what gonna do right before you walked up. You know what I'm saying? Either way it goes. First off, hold up. What? No, bro. Hold up. No. Let go. Hold on a second. I will smack you right now, bitch. I will smack you. You want to get smacked? That's not here. Hey.
Can you call please?
Yeah.
Now I gotta say this one thing. That one guy has some pretty good dance moves there. I'll tell you what. Now, here's the question that I have for you, my wonderful and loyal audience. I could see one of three things happening here out of all this. A, Democrats actually start changing their tune on what to do about crime such that it benefits everybody. B, they change their tune about what's happening on crime and make sure that policies and laws are set up more to protect them even further than what they are, to the detriment of everybody else. Or C, they ignore it. Why do I get the feeling that Democrats are either going to ignore this stuff or just say, oh, well, this is random. These are random problems, but we'll tighten up our security to make sure that we don't experience these problems anymore. This is one of those moments in the history of the world when it should be remembered, particularly among you Democrats out there, be very careful what you advocate for, because it just might someday come back and bite you in the rear end. Well, here you go. Oh, you're absolutely right, dude. You're absolutely right. That UFC was awful. Anyway, that's what we've got today for Front Porch Brunch. And I want to thank you guys, as always, for being here. Absolutely fantastic. I mean, have a lot of fun doing these. These are great. I've got a video that's coming out tomorrow morning. Yeah, and I'm probably going to be getting back on the wagon as far as my videos are concerned. I'm trying to anyway. But I've got an idea for one that I want to do, and it has to do with a subject that was mentioned in chat. And y'all probably know about the story. It has to do with Kristi Noem and dogs. So we'll just leave it right there. But anyway, we will be back this week with videos, with live streams. I want to thank you guys, as always, for being here. Remember, this Thursday night, 7 p.m. Eastern, May 2nd, Dr. Robin McCutcheon is going to be back on the electronic front porch. And we will be getting into it again. So thanks you guys for being here. Thanks for have a great weekend, by the way. I don't know what it's like where you guys are at, but the weather where I am right now is fantastic. I've got every window in the house opened up, and it is just awesome. So you guys have a great weekend. Tell everybody in your family that you love them. Spend as much time with them as you can. And remember the words of that great American philosopher, Tom T. Hall, when he said, "It's faster horses, younger lovers, older whiskey, and more money. Thanks a lot for being here, and we'll see you later.